Welcome to 1,000,001 Things.
Girls, get it together. You have a show to do.
Because it's cool to know stuff. Let's get started. Welcome to our show, 1,000,001 Things, because it is cool to know stuff. We are sponsored by Quirky Minds Media, which is a full-service media production company. Go out to quirkymindsmedia.com to find out more. My name is Temple Kinyon, and I'm with my delightful host, Cynthia DeBoer. How are you, Cynthia?
I'm good, Temple. How about you?
I'm dandy.
Good and dandy. We're all set to go. Well, today we are going to talk about the root of all evil, as they say, money. But a lot of people don't really understand where it came from and how all of this started out. So our topic title actually is Money, Then and Now. And the information that Temple, our little researcher over here, did today is from the PBS show Nova. It was the history of money and some basic Google searches that she did. The first known form of money was bartering. Now, bartering is the exchange of resources or services, and it is obviously for mutual advantages. So, in other words, if somebody needs 3 chickens and he doesn't have, I don't know, a pig, then they would exchange a pig for 3 chickens or whatever have you. And it obviously had to date back tens of thousands of years because we didn't have 1s and 5s and 20s and all those kinds of things. It obviously is well before the use of money.
Yeah, bartering makes sense. And it still goes on today. I'll wash your car if you give me a cup of sugar. Okay, that's sort of a dumb example, but I mean, that's bartering. No money was exchanged, but you got a service or a good, and I got a service or a good. That's basically all it is. It will go on through the end of time, probably.
Well, yeah, and what I liked about bartering was it just had to do with, how we talk today, supply and demand. If something's really in demand and short supply, of course, it's worth more. And they really did take that into consideration when they bartered, because if you were the one guy on the next 50 acres that had a cow, well, then that cow's milk was going to be a lot more valuable than if you were in the city and there were 50 milking cows,
right?
That kind of thing.
Right. And it ties into, we're thousands of years, 9 to 6,000 BC, but bartering kind of is like the exchange, but you could also use cattle, sheep, camels, any kind of livestock to trade. Like, I want something and I have a camel. And there was agreed upon value at the whatever time that the camel had, or whatever service that you are providing or are asking for. And then when modern agriculture practices came about, well, it was modern back then, but you start growing wheat or rice or any kind of agricultural product, well, then there again, you have actually something with value you can trade. But as we see money, like as far as dollar bills or bills and coin, that again still hasn't played into where we're at in history. It's simply, I'm going to do something for you, or I'm going to give you something like a cow or a chicken or a bag of wheat. And then that's how you get what you want.
Exactly.
But it still goes on. That's what I think is funny, is these are such old, ancient forms of money or ways to get what you want, and we can still use them today. Whereas there's other times where it has come and gone.
Yeah,
that we'll talk about.
Exactly. Yeah. And they use this when a marriage contract basically was done.
Yeah.
They would use that as well. So, okay, you want my oldest daughter and she's got all this knowledge and da-da-da-da-da, so I need 3 horses.
Yeah.
But maybe the younger one, even though she is younger and you think that the possibility, I'm talking about the man marrying her, might have more of an opportunity to give him sons, say, she might only be, in his mind, worth 1 cow and a couple of chickens, because, again, we're talking about an individual's perception of what the value is.
Value. Yep. That's exactly what we're talking about.
And I think I love it. I mean, we still do that to this day. If somebody says, oh, hey, can you do this for me? And I was like, I really need help with this and I don't understand it. So it's even in trade. If you want to know something about a computer, but somebody else, maybe they need a shelf hung and you happen to be a carpenter and the other person happens to be really tech savvy, then that's what you exchange. And I love it because it can be so far removed from each other.
Yeah, right. I mean, I would pay someone to do something I didn't know know how to do. But if I could barter or trade something, I would rather do that. Because to me, then you're done with that. Then you get that checked off your list. So that in itself has its own value.
Exactly. And you're helping somebody else out in return in a way that maybe they couldn't do it. And a lot of times these trades or barters, if you had to go out and pay for it, everybody gets what they want, not at much of a higher cost than they would have to pay if they would have had to go out and basically hire a subcontractor or something like that.
Right.
And again, just like any other contract you have with someone, you do need to check out and see how accurate they are, that they do know how to hang a shelf, or that they do really know about computers or whatever it might have.
Yeah.
But that's just common sense thing, I would think.
Yeah. So at one point in our history, about 1200 BC, and this one I thought was really interesting because I've heard of it, but I didn't ever really figure out, and yes, you can let me know if you know the answer. I didn't ever figure out how cowrie shells got their value. And cowrie shells, C-O-W-R-I-E, I hope I'm saying that right. They're the shells of a mollusk that were widely available in the shallow waters, and they said in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. They were first used in China and also Africa. And they literally are these beautiful shells. If you Google it and look it up, they're really pretty shells. And when I saw them, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen cowrie shells. I guess I didn't stop and think what the name of those shells was or is, but it's cowrie shells. And there were a lot of societies that used them, and they were seen as a symbol of wealth, and they were most widely used currency, the most widely used currency and longest used currency at that period of time. I didn't ever look to see like when they kind of went out of fashion, and maybe there's still countries that use it as value. Maybe they trade these cowrie shells for other things. I don't know. I couldn't really find. That's my point, is like why were they valuable? Just because of where you could find them, or was it really hard to get them? And so they had that value because they were hard to get, but they're sure pretty, and they would like string them and make jewelry out of them too or whatever. So I just think it's interesting that a specific shell had that much value, and it was used not just in one little village or one little area. It was used in China and Africa.
Yeah, that's interesting. It must be something that basically in that area to start with, because I know like abalone shells are just absolutely gorgeous, and people even use them in jewelry and everything else and crush them and do all kinds of amazing things with them. So it is kind of interesting, but you never know what somebody is going to give value to. So it really is interesting to find that out. Now, around 1000 BC, coins became in existence, and they were the metal money, bronze and copper. Cowrie shell imitations were manufactured in China by the end of the Stone Age. Now, that's interesting to me, too, because obviously this cowrie shell is something that's very, very important to them, and enough so that they created their metal money. And maybe that was because of maybe they overfished it, so to speak, or they were becoming so that you couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So that's why the need for that, because as we know, see a need, fill a need kind of thing. And I'm sure that that's what they were probably doing.
I never thought of it that way, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. They used metal tool money, such as the metal used for knives and spades, as money. So in other words, if you were a blacksmith and you needed to make a sword for someone, or you needed tools or whatever, then you would trade for metal, because that's what you needed to make money. And again, it's still bringing the bartering thing into it.
Right. And the value of that metal obviously there was a lot of value to that metal. And I guess these are the very first kind of coins. I mean, that's what they were. So 1000 BC is when things just got interesting.
Yeah. And then early metal monies developed into the primitive versions of round coins. And then still today, the Chinese coins, they have a little hole in them. And the reason being for that was that they would put a chain through it. And I know through feng shui, which is basically an ancient art of placing things where you have like a water fountain by your front door to invite money and all of that. Well, the coins that they use to basically help you with your finances have a little hole in them, and a lot of people will hang them. And so again, we're talking something from 1000 BC that literally is still going on today. So it is quite amazing when you think about it.
It is interesting. If something works, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So then, like, there's the modern coinage that we BC, which it would be the metals that were more precious that they used. And that was 500 BC. So for 500 years, they were cool with the metal money out of like the tool metal. But then outside of China, apparently someone got smart and said, let's pick these precious metals. So like a lump of silver. And they would melt them down or form them into like the round form of a coin like we see today. And they would stamp images of gods or emperors on them. And I think that we value those people or gods, and this adds value to the round metal lump of whatever, silver or bronze or gold, whatever it was. Apparently, those types of things first appeared in a place called Lydia, which I've heard of. It is where modern day Turkey is. And the Chinese coins were quickly copied. Basically, they copied the coins that the Chinese were using, and then they refined them further for their specific needs. And you found them with the Greeks, the Persians, the Macedonians, and then later the Roman empires. And again, those were made from those precious metals like silver, bronze, and gold, which again, they placed more value on those than they did on the tool metals. And then they placed more value even on those metal coins than obviously other forms of trading materials. So
I think too, when you look at that and you start thinking that, okay, it started out with cowrie shells and then those were changed into this and then that changed into that and on and on and on. And a lot of times when you look at this, you go, well, how can that possibly happen? But it's just introducing something new, and then pretty soon the old just kind of falls out of fashion, so to speak, or it becomes so much less and people start using other things. They trade it off for the newer or however. It's just kind of like with us with the dollars to the credit cards kind of thing.
Well, maybe it's because it was easier to trade coin than it was a camel.
Well,
like,
definitely.
Here's your camel, put it in your pocket. Well, so maybe just the simplicity of it. It was so much more simple to deal with smaller things.
Well, not only that, I think that if you were talking about out in the middle of nowhere where you've got a farm here and a farm there, as opposed to in the city, you're not going to have an apartment on a 3-story building that's got a cow and a chicken and a couple of pigs in there. I mean, you're going to need to have something that you can actually trade with. That and seriously, money is still a form of bartering. It's just a barter that works for whatever you want instead of I need this service and you need that cow or however have you.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting.
Right.
The other one that came around in 118 BC, which is really interesting to me, is leather money.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. I didn't know there was such a thing.
I'd never ever heard. And again, used in China in the form of 1-foot square pieces of white deerskin with colorful borders. And they could be considered the first document type of banknote. So that, again, a banknote, as we all know, is like $1. And so that's what they were using. But I'll tell you what, if I was a white deer, I'd sure be hiding for cover.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder if how that population fared.
Survived or didn't survive. So that's kind of interesting. Right. But you can understand it. I mean, that's just the way it is. Because nowadays, when we think of leather, we think of cows. We don't necessarily think of other animals. So it's kind of interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
So our show is called 1,000,001 Things, and money happens to be our conversation about today. But maybe we want to talk about 1,000,001 books.
Yes. 1,000,001 Books is the brainchild of James Kelly, and he is an amazing man. He got together this concept, and we're now in our 3rd campaign of this. This is run twice a year. It is to promote indie authors. And what is so great about it is that this program, which you can go to 1,000,000booksin100days.com and check out all of the different genres. Every author on there is an indie author. For those that don't know, an indie author is a self-published author. These books are dynamite. They're in about every genre you can think of. And the really positive thing about it, not only do the authors get a little bit more of a royalty than they would if they sold it through another outlet, but $1 from every book sold goes to charity. So it is amazing that we can actually reach out to people, be kind of showcased on our own special little platform, help everyone, including ourselves, and really really feel a part of something that, like I said, James thought of, and it has just grown into a really lovely way of helping others. And we would love everyone to be a part of it. Anyone that's out there, if you go to our website and you purchase a book, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear if you like it, what you think about the program, anything like that. Because again, we are out there and we could post comments. And of course, you could feel good too, because not only are you helping out us starving authors, but you could also help a charity.
Yeah, if you've done that, we appreciate it, and let us know, and you can be part of the challenge too. So campaign number 3 starts April 1st,
Yes.
2021, goes through July 10th, 2021. Help us sell 1 million books in those 100 days, and you can be a part of the fun and the wonderful causes that this program offers. 1 million books in 100days.com. So that is something very cool that Cynthia and I are involved in. Our books are out there as well. So visit us and buy some books.
Yeah, definitely.
So this money conversation takes a little bit of a turn when we get into the AD years.
Okay.
And before we talk about the real life actual money, what was going on, I found this little piece of information that in 800 to 900 AD, the saying to pay through the nose came about.
Okay.
And it came from the Danes in Ireland. And these guys were really serious about their money.
Wow.
They would slit the noses of those who were remiss in paying the Danish poll tax. I did not get into the details on this, but I thought it was kind of an interesting thing because we've talked about how sayings come about before on previous shows, and that is a saying to pay through the nose. And now you know that back then, if you didn't pay the Danish poll tax, you were going to get your nose slit.
Wow, that's something that you're not going to hide very easily, that's for sure.
Right.
Okay, so 806 AD, the first known paper banknotes appeared again in China. And paper currency, paper banknotes, however you want to say it, it's basically the dollar bills that we're now familiar with. And they experienced over 500 years of early paper money spanning from the 9th through the 15th centuries, which that's pretty amazing in itself that it went on for that length of time.
Yeah.
And they grew in production during this time to the point that their value rapidly depreciated and inflation soared. Well, we've all unfortunately have experienced that at least once in our lifetimes. And then beginning in 1455, the use of paper money in China disappeared for several hundred years. This was still many years before paper currency would reappear in Europe and 3 centuries before it was considered common.
Isn't that funny? Because we've had it in our lifetime, so maybe we take for granted that there hasn't always been paper money or even coin money.
Exactly.
But there's been wampum, which are strings of beads made from clamshells.
There we go again with the shells.
I know. I love that.
It's so strange to me.
Yeah, the earliest known use of wampum, or these clamshells, was by North American Indians in 1535. And we think that that probably wasn't the actual year. They just said, oh, let's come up with our own form of money. It probably dated back further than 1535. And the word wampum means white, which was the color of the beads.
Wow.
So there you go.
Wow.
Now we all know what wampum is.
That's amazing. From different shows that you've watched and through the centuries and all of that, they would show trading with Native Americans would be with colorful beads or colorful clothing or that kind of thing. So it's interesting that money in their mind had to be these white beads. It's interesting to me.
Right. So then we take a huge jump by about 300 years and we're into the 1800s, and that's when the gold standard came about. I'll admit I don't know a huge amount about the gold standard. Of course, I've heard of it and I did a little research on it. So gold officially made the standard of value in England in 1816. It was the standard, and the guidelines made to allow for a non-inflationary production of the standard banknotes, which represented a certain amount of gold. So you couldn't have more gold or more banknotes than you had gold to back it, right? That's basically what it is.
Right.
And the banknotes had been used in England and Europe for several hundred years prior to that. We know that, but their worth had never been tied directly to gold. And in the United States, the gold standard was officially enacted in 1900, which helped lead to the establishment of a central bank. However, in the 1930s, when the massive depression hit, that was the end of the gold standard, which I guess I knew that, but I hadn't really put it together in my head on why. And the gold standard was revised in the United States and the gold was devalued.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first step in ending the relationship between the paper and the gold altogether, and the British and international gold standards soon ended as well. The complexities of international monetary regulation began, and we're not going to get into that. We just know it's there.
Yeah, we know it's there, and it is kind of confusing to me. I'm sorry, but when you know something works, it's kind of like, why reinvent the wheel? And I think that every country would be probably in a lot less trouble if they stuck to the old ways.
I agree on that one.
Because at this point in time, it seems like we're out of money. Let's just go print some more, which really does not help inflation or anything else that we've got going on. But again, that's what it is. Now we get to credit cards. And this is something that happened in 1946. And here's a little side note for you. Years ago, I took a course on finances. And we just had a show that we mentioned the acronym of AWOL, which means absent without leave. But here's another one. This particular thing that I went through said CC, credit cards, meant consumer cocaine, quick, easy fix, and long-term pain. And I think that that's kind of scary. And then the other thing that is talked about is the fact that the highest rate of a credit card that you can pay interest on is 29.99%. Do you know why? 30% is considered usury. So in other words, you're a loan shark if you charge 30%.
Oh, so it's right under that. So we're not a bunch of loan
right
sharks.
under that. That's why credit card companies do that. And I get it. It's kind of like a savings, but in the same term, we are spending our tomorrows today, basically, because we haven't earned that money yet. And believe me, they definitely take advantage of that. But the bank issued charge cards originated in Brooklyn by a banker named John Biggins, and he launched the Charge It card. And Charge It is spelled CHARG-IT. And the purchases were forwarded to Biggins Bank, and he was basically the middleman. And he reimbursed the merchant and obtained payment from the customer. This is what became known as a closed loop system, and purchases could only be made locally. Only bank customers could obtain this Charge It card. So you had to be a customer of his, which really isn't much different than the credit cards we have today, because you have to be a customer or apply for that specific card. And then Frank McNamara issued first actual credit card, and that was amazing. It was the American Express in 1958. And then in the mid 1970s, then we started in with e-banking. So like we said, through the ages, we've kept changing and redoing everything. But the one thing that has survived so far from everything that we know is still the good old barter system.
Yeah, exactly. So from credit cards, then we kind of merged into the e-banking, which I think a lot of us have done. That obviously blew up when the internet started in the 1990s.
Oh, yeah.
It was used earlier than that. Direct deposit was used by the Air Force in 1974, I think is when they started. The Social Security Administration did their testing on direct deposit in 1975. So that was done, but I don't think it was commonplace until the internet blew up in the 90s. And we all use some form of electronic banking, or most of us do, because even an ATM is considered electronic because you're putting that card in and getting your cash out. So those are things that I can't imagine not having available to me: credit cards, cash, and e-banking. And so those are kind of where we are right now in 2021. However, there is one big thing we need to mention quickly is cryptocurrency. And that is sort of our future. Cryptocurrency came around in 2008, 2009. It's just a digital asset designed to work as a medium of exchange. The individual quote unquote coin ownership records are stored in a ledger online, obviously, and they exist only in the form of computerized database. And of course, they use strong cryptography to keep it secure. And that's why this is such a big deal, is that it is a very secure system to use for banking or purchasing or in trade, but it's not real. It's all data. That's all it is data. So depending on how you feel about it, then I guess you're going to invest or you're not going to invest. The first cryptocurrency system was Bitcoin by Satoshi Nakamoto. Sorry if I trashed his name, in 2009. And there are now over 4,000 cryptocurrencies available in early 2021, and they are starting to regulate it. So this is something that we're going to see happen, evolve, go forward, possibly, or it could just go completely wrong or bad. We don't know. know. But right now it's sort of the catchphrase or the hot thing to have cryptocurrency.
Yeah, makes me very uncomfortable, but then I'm kind of old school. I understand computers, and obviously we use them as writers and all of that, but I still like the good old-fashioned paper and pen and the books that you can hold in your hand and the proof that you can see in your wallet. And seriously, there's another edge to this that they don't really talk about, and it's a big concern to me, and that is the emotions that is tied to it. Because years ago, I was a blackjack dealer because we live in Las Vegas. Anyway, during that time, if someone would come up and they would say money plays, you should see the scramble. Nobody wanted to see that money plays, because when you flash a credit card or you see a stack of chips, you're playing. It's not the real deal.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people get in so very much trouble when they're playing cards at casino or whatever, and they're just using chips, and then they realize at the end of the night, oh, well, you know what? That black chip was $50
right,
or whatever have you. And so that's kind of a concern for me. And again, with the credit cards, it's not a good thing. But that's about all that we have. I know that they want us to eventually go to a cashless society, and that may be 2023.
In Sweden, yes.
In Sweden.
They are doing it in Sweden in 2023.
So I think there's a lot more out there, a lot more information that we can share with you today. But just think about what we've given you so far, because we are kind of at the end of our show. We do know that there's a lot of flaws and there's a lot of pros and cons, and we'd really like to hear from the general public what your feelings are on that and how you would feel about it. And I know that the younger generation is probably all for it because they've grown up in this technological age, but not so sure about how us older adults feel about it.
Right. Some of the predictions, just real quick, is this digital currency becomes the norm, the cryptocurrency or Bitcoin and those types of things. And that's something they threw out in my research. People rely more on artificial intelligence investing solutions. So I think that might be something we need to reinvest our time in, is to looking into that, because I think that's fascinating. Yeah, I'm going to go see my financial advisor, but it's an AI. It's not a real human. Of course, those cryptocurrencies will probably continue to be mainstream. But again, it's like anything, stock market, you just don't know. So you either invest in it and pray for the best, or stay away from it and hope nobody you know loses their cryptocurrency value. Basically, everything's going to be data driven, and this is prediction. And right now we see it with things like Facebook or Google, where the data itself is the currency. My personal information has a value to Facebook to be able to sell to someone else. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's another thing maybe we can look into and kind of talk a little more about when we have a little more time. So either way, I appreciate your time, Cynthia, talking about money, because it affects everybody, and there's never enough in my life. But you look beyond the actual dollar amount of things and know you have a lot of blessings, and you're one of my blessings, and I can never place a value on that. You're that's invaluable.
Right. Well, thank you. And I feel the same way. And I think that's what we really need to focus on here, is that money helps us live a better life. And they do say that money is the root of all evil, and it can be a blessing, no doubt, when you need medical care or you need something and you've got enough finances to take care of it. But at the same time, we really do, like you said, need to really sit back and count our blessings and not just be so financially driven to take everything that we have in our lives. And money is, according to a couple of other people that I've talked to, it's called congealed energy. And how do we want to spend our energy, and how do we want to save our energy and enjoy our energies, no matter what they may be, through friendships or whatever other blessing we want to talk about or think about.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to wrap up today's show. We are considering talking about this in the future, a little bit about how to help us all, maybe a little bit with finances from our personal point of view. Neither one of us is a financial advisor, but it's kind of live and learn. And if we can offer even one tip to you guys that might help, we would be happy to do that. So look forward to that in some of our upcoming shows. And for now, again, please reach out at 1,001thingsshow@gmail.com with any comments. Check out our website. You can check out all of our shows there, which is 1,000,001things.com. Because like Temple and I say, 1,000,001 things, because it's cool to know stuff. Bye.
Thanks.
Join us next time when we come up with something new.
After all, there's always 1,000,001 things to talk about.